Hello, and welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, the subreddit that teaches you that sometimes getting exactly what you asked for isn't ideal. Sure, I'll relearn how to hold a pen your way. So way back when I was in my first few weeks of 5th grade, my teacher, let's call her Mrs. M, decided she didn't like the way I held my pen. Mrs. M thought my penmanship was very sloppy as a result of my improper grip. Too many fingers, she would constantly scoff. Most of the time she would just hover over me at my desk, scolding me with her pursed lips. This I could handle. However, one day she had the nerve, nay the audacity, to reach over my shoulder and physically correct my fingers mid-stroke. I was seeing red. After that bold and brazen move, I decided enough is enough. I was done listening to her nag, let alone touch me, and as a result, I would teach myself how to hold a pen her way. Fast forward a few months into my 5th grade career, and I've begun to master Mrs. M's kung fu grip of the pencil. She was very pleased with my progress. I was practicing at home, starting slowly with normal lettering, then into cursive, and finally seeing how outrageously big I can make my letters, and conversely, how daringly small. At that moment, it dawns on me. I know how I'll get back at Mrs. M. Over the course of my remaining homework assignments and book reports, I start minimizing my script, ever so slightly as to not raise suspicion. At one point, I thought I was caught. Mrs. M strolls over to my desk with my homework in hand and asks, "Why are you writing so small, Miss Allikins?" In a pinch, I lie with, "I'm just trying to conserve paper, Mrs. M." Befuddled, she accepts my lie and asks that I at least make sure my work is legible. I accept. Knowing the heat is on, I keep my sizing at that constant for almost the remainder of the year. It's now my last ever homework assignment for Mrs. M, a report on our favorite endangered species. I choose the Galapagos tortoise. Now, I can't tell you what facts I reported on the Galapagos tortoise, but I can tell you how I reported them. Almost every home has a magnifying glass, and instead of setting ants on fire, I was going to use mine for a higher purpose. I pulled out that majestic wooden-handled relic from my parents' junk drawer with a grin and set up shop at my desk. With it in hand, hovering it ever so slightly over my pen and white-lined paper, I began to write my report. They say read the fine print, and I can tell you this, Mrs. M was going to read mine. The following week, we had the in-class presentation of our project, where we were also required to submit our written portion. Mrs. M is sitting in the audience of my peers, and everything goes swimmingly. My large lettered poster board, scattered with pictures of the Galapagos tortoise, is a hit. There's a round of applause from my cohort, and with an enormous look of joy, I place my written submission on top of the pile of others. At this moment, you could almost hear me nonchalantly whistle as I triumphantly stroll broad-chested back to my desk. The very next day, I learned what the look of hate is. Mrs. M was seething over my shenanigans. Before class even starts, I'm called up to her desk and am verbally torn to shreds over what I did. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I do remember the feeling that came over me. Vindication. "I got you, witch," is all I could think as her lips sputtered out the spit-lined words that I had to rewrite my report in a legible manner. To this day, I still don't mind the fact that I had to rewrite that report, as it's comforting enough to think of the audible, "Oh screw you, Miss Allikins," that must have poured out of her mouth onto her glass of grating Cabernet. You know, I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that her sloppy handwriting had less to do with how she held a pen and more to do with the fact that she was a 5th grader. This was brilliant though, so hats off to you, Miss Allikins. I don't know you, but with a mind like that, I'm sure you're going to accomplish great things. The customer is always right. First post here, sorry if it isn't great. Also, not my story, however, it is a story from my mom. When she was in college, my mom would work at a Marie Callender's. For those who don't know what that is, think of one of those old-fashioned diners from the 90s. My mom worked as a waitress, and occasionally she would get the average person who thought, "I need to feel better by making people who will do my bidding feel awful, which is why I go to restaurants." One day, one of these entitled people walks in with their friend, and my mom is supposed to wait on their table. She goes over and asks what they would like to drink. The friend asks, "Could I get a water and Sprite?" Whereas the entitled person demands, in her own words, "Get me a water and coffee." My mom shrugs off the hostility in the person's voice and does what she's told. She brings out the drinks and puts them on the table. About a minute goes by, and my mom is carrying a tray of food in each hand for a different table while walking past the table with the entitled person. The entitled person puts her hand out to block my mom from moving past while almost tripping my mom to make sure she doesn't ignore her, and says, "Apparently you can't understand English yet, honey." My mom is of Asian descent, but was raised to learn English as her first language. "I asked for a hot coffee, H-O-T, so heat this up." and the entitled person thrust the cup of coffee into my mom's face, as though my mom has a third arm that can carry the cup along with the 2 trays of food. My mom doesn't like these kinds of people, but she also knows that the customer is always right. My mom smiles and replies, "Sure thing." She places the cup on one of the tray tables since she, in fact, has no third arm. Apparently, the friend of the entitled person was nice enough to tell her friend, "I don't think that was very nice. I don't think you said hot when you first asked." After delivering the food she had, she walks into the kitchen with a cup of coffee. There's a coffee pot full of fresh, hot coffee waiting to be poured. My mom ignores it. There's only one way for her to make sure that the coffee is hot enough. She proceeds to stick the entire cup in the oven. After about 3 to 4 minutes of cooking, my mom uses tongs to pull out the cup since it's way too hot to be held. The results couldn't be better. The coffee was visibly boiling. My mom places the cup on a tray using tongs to make sure she doesn't have to hold the cup. She walks over to the table, smiling, and places the cup on the table using tongs. The entitled person stares at the cup, almost as though she realizes what she had brought upon herself. The cup itself was even emitting steam, the liquid inside bubbling with heat. That person didn't even touch the coffee. Want me to find the exact same item? Okay. Backstory. I work in retail, a real joy, I know. And the store I work at is one of those discount stores where you can get name brands for less money. The items aren't used, but the way we get them, we're able to sell them for a few dollars less than the original retail price. Our system for making price tags in that store is pretty makeshift at times. If a customer comes up to the register with an item that's missing a tag, we basically just go onto the floor, find the same item or something similar, and just scan that tag and print a duplicate for the item being sold. It's not perfect, but our price range is pretty narrow, so even when we don't get the exact same item, it's within a $1 or $2 margin of error. Story. I was working the register one day, and this woman, who I'll call Karen because Karen, comes up to my register and drops her few items on the counter. I start ringing and get to the last item, which did not have a price tag. I told Karen that I would have to go onto the floor and find the price. She said okay, but she had a lot of attitude in her tone and in the way she was looking at me and standing. Whatever. I left the register and ran to the active section. The item in question was a box set of ankle weights. I should mention that this was during January, so even though the bulk of holiday madness was over, we were still busy, and people had been complaining about the lack of cashiers all day. Anyway, I didn't immediately see another box set of ankle weights to make the price from, but I saw a set of dumbbells, so I grabbed those. They were $9.99. I came back, made the price sticker, slapped it on the ankle weights box, and returned it to Karen. Okay, they'll be $9.99, I told her. She gave me the stink eye. And where did that price come from? She snapped. I explained our ticket-making process and that I couldn't find another one of the same thing, but I found an item that was pretty close to what she was purchasing and made a ticket from that. This was apparently not acceptable. So you don't actually know if this is the right price. Why should I pay this price if it's not the right one? You need to find the same item and make the price from that, she informed me, talking to me like I was a total moron. Well, everything in the active section is pretty close in price range. It ranges from like $5.99 to around $14.99. And I did use weights, they just aren't the exact same ones, so this is probably the right price, or very close to it, I explained. I didn't want to waste even more time on the floor hunting for an item that we might not even have more of, just so she can potentially save maybe $1. I don't care. Go back to the floor and find the exact same item. I don't have to pay a price that's listed for something else. I only have to pay for this exact item, she ordered, now raising her voice and going from having a bad attitude to full-on jerk mode. Okay, fine. I left the register and returned to the active section, rolling my eyes until I could see my own brain. I spent 5 minutes, which is a long time when you have a line of angry customers, on the floor hunting for a flipping pair of ankle weights. I was about to call my manager and ask what I should do, when lo and behold, I found another pair of the exact same ankle weights, hidden behind a bunch of other junk. I could feel the light of the heavens shine down on me, and could hear the angels singing as I read the price tag. God had smiled upon me that glorious day. I was smiling like a supervillain all the way back, the ankle weights under my arm. I reprinted the sticker that I'd gotten from her coveted exact same item and returned to Karen. You were right. $9.99 wasn't the correct price. She smiled smugly. The correct price is $16.99, I added. Her face fell. Wait, what? She was flabbergasted. Yeah, I guess these are a high-end brand that I didn't know about or something. Either way, I found the exact same item. I showed her the item I'd made the new price from. The exact same item as the one she wanted. And it's now $16.99, I informed her, doing everything possible not to look so satisfied that she yelled at me for having an attitude. Okay, I'll just take it for the $9.99 price you gave me earlier, she stated. I shook my head. Sorry, I can't do that now. My job is technically to do what you said, to find the exact same item. Since it's an imperfect system, the managers are gracious and we don't get in trouble if we mismark something by a few dollars. And since it was so busy, I just grabbed the first thing I saw, figuring it was close enough. But now that I know the correct price, I'm obligated to sell it at that price. I can't knowingly misprice an item for you. My tone was painfully professional and sweet. It was so fake, but if she called me out on it, I could just play dumb. The look on her face was worth every minute I'd spent rummaging through the active section. I had basically offered her a $7 discount before, but because she was so bent on only paying for the exact item that she was purchasing, she ended up paying more. We allow our rules to be a bit flexible to save time, and if she'd let me be flexible, then she would have saved that $7. But no, she demanded that I follow the letter of the law. She insisted that I only make the price of that exact same item, and she ended up spending almost twice as much as she would have on those weights. Well, you had it marked at $9.99 before, so you have to sell it to me for that price, she whined. I shook my head. No, I'm actually not allowed to do that. It was never advertised by the store that the item was $9.99. That price came from a momentary error on my part, which I've now corrected. At this point, there's nothing I can do. The price is $16.99, and that's what we have to sell it for. She tried to fight it for a little while, but I just kept telling her no, and she wanted to leave. She grumbled and threw her money at me, complaining the entire time as I finished ringing her up. When I was done, she snatched her bag from me and huffed off. And just to add a cherry to the top of my already delicious cake, I said, "Have a great day," in an exaggerated customer service voice. Note: we get items from the warehouse with tickets already on them. We only have to make tags in the store if they've somehow been removed, hence the imperfect system. I'll also add that if this was an expensive item, I totally would have understood where she was coming from. When we're dealing with anything above like $20, I'm very careful in finding the exact and correct price. This situation was just ridiculous because the item was so inexpensive, and I even explained to her that the price range for this department was very narrow. Creating drama over ankle weights of all things is honestly such a Karen thing to do. And I would say I hope she learned something, but she didn't. I hope you liked the video if you made it this far. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. It would be greatly appreciated.